New reports suggest China is in talks with Cuba to establish a spy base on the island nation and just 100 miles south of the U.S. According to the Wall Street Journal, the two countries have reached a secret agreement for China to establish an electronic eavesdropping facility, which would allow the Chinese to potentially intercept electronic communications throughout the southeastern portion of our country. So here with us now to talk more about this, former CIA officer and FBI special agent Tracy Walder. Tracy, thank you for your time. Certainly disturbing if it's true, because we don't have 100% confirmation, because U.S. officials are remaining anonymous, the ones who are reporting this. But if it is true, how dangerous could this be for America?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Nichole. And you're right. We aren't certain that this is true, although I would imagine that we're not just going to sort of come out with this information because we want to try to mitigate it behind the scenes. Really, the way that I see the danger in this is something called ELINs, or electronic communications. That's what the Chinese want to collect by having some kind of a listening post, is what we call them, on Cuba, which is about 100 miles from Florida. And that would really target the southeastern portion of America. And so we have to remember Central Command is in Tampa, Florida, and then Fort Bragg is in North Carolina. And they would potentially be able to collect on those bases. Now, certainly those bases have mitigation in place to stop that kind of collection. But really, that's what would be in the zone, if you will, in this kind of communication. And also, they're probably looking at ship traffic as well, going in and out of that area.
All right, so I want to talk about the mitigation in just a minute. But first, I mean, Tracy, is this something that's really out of the ordinary? Because we now have evidence China spies on us, think Chinese spy balloon. But we also know that we spy on China, we spy on other countries spy on us. I mean, is this all routine, so to speak, versus potentially nefarious?
I think that that's an excellent question, Nichole. I don't want to use the word routine, right? I don't know that it's something that's occurring every single day. However, I think something that's flown under the radar a bit is in 2017, the Chinese they bought up land in the highest point of Washington, D.C., with the goal in mind really to build a listening post there. That was stopped ultimately by Congress, but this isn't, I guess, what we would say the first attempt to do something like this. And you're right, we have listening posts out near Taiwan, and we do have our spy planes out in the South China Sea. And so it's, I guess, par for the course and expected behavior.
All right. So, Tracy, one thing you mentioned when you answered the first question, you mentioned mitigation. And we know that National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby today said in part that the U.S. is taking steps to counter China's efforts to invest in infrastructure around the world. So what does that really mean? I mean, are we doing enough at this point?
It's hard to know. Obviously, I don't work at the CIA anymore, and I don't have insight exactly into what they're doing. But I believe that what he's referring to there is what we would call proactive measures. We're looking at what China's next steps may be in terms of building these listening posts and how to protect ourselves from the encroachment of these listening posts and to stop them from being able to collect on them. And we're probably doing that most likely diplomatically in dealing with some of these countries that they may try to approach. And one of the things we have done is we have obtained more land and bases in the Philippines, which is closer to China and enables us to have a better understanding of what they're doing.
Well, Tracy, for a lot of people, this is ringing bells of the Cold War. And talk to us about the similarities here, because we know some Washington lawmakers are saying, hey, China is using, quote, the Soviet Union's playbook. Those words came from Representative Mike Waltz of Florida today. So is that kind of potentially what's happening here?
It's interesting, Nichole. I'll be honest. I'm not certain that I was completely convinced that we were in a Cold War with China because, we're so reliant on their global production chain, and China's relying on everyone else for that. But the interesting thing is we are looking at political hostility. We are looking at military tensions. And I guess the turning point for me is that they really are employing these kind of Soviet-era active measures. They are using propaganda. They are using agents of influence. They are using written and oral disinformation, which is something we really haven't seen from them until recently. And so I do think that they are sort of taking a page out of the Soviet playbook, if you will.
Oh, and last question for you, Tracy. I mean, is this all part of China really trying to secure its spot as the dominant world power?
I'm not certain that they want to be the dominant world power, but what I am seeing with China is there is this reliance to develop these networks for natural resources across the world. That is something that they are deficient in and that they really need. And they really are wanting to be relevant and on par with the rest of, I guess, what we would call those kind of powerhouse nations. And so I do think that this is an aggressive move by them to establish sort of that co-dominance, if you will.
All right, Tracy Walder, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.